Today is episode number 52, which makes officially 1 year of podcasting episodes already that we've released. And I just want to thank all of you for tuning in and listening faithfully to our show, GovCon Giants. And also today, I want to give a special shout out to all of those persons who left us reviews. In order to celebrate, I want to just read off the last couple of reviews that we've had on the show. Crazy Cool 1007 says, "On repeat" is his title. I keep going back and listening to the older podcasts, picking up different business nuggets, and just realizing how valuable the conversations are. I enjoy the podcast, not just Eric, Gilstar Group, LLC. The podcast that keeps on giving. I've listened to many, many podcasts and audiobooks, and I must say, hands down, this is one of my favorite. It's my go-to while working at the gym at 5 a.m. Eric is in the process of changing my life, and he doesn't even know it yet. I'm so impressed with all of the guests on the show because they are relatable and so honest about the good and the bad of GovCon and business in general. Thank you, and Maria. I'm currently working my way through Eric's paid GovCon Giants course, and I'm actually excited about listening to each video in the course. Thank you, Eric, and guest Louis Stargill. And then the last review I want to read off is, it's a wealth of knowledge. MK's Kumba. I have been listening to this podcast for a while and generally feel that Eric is setting up his listeners for success by having diverse guests from different fields and asking the right questions just due to experience. It is a wealth of knowledge gain. I feel extremely blessed to have come across this podcast and encourage anyone whose ambition it is to be a federal contractor to pay close attention. Listen, guys, thank you so much for those kind, heartfelt words. This is the fuel that keeps the fire burning.
Everybody's human, so it doesn't always need to be about the business. I think that the most, important thing to understand from people is their why. And I like to ask people, what is your why? Why are you doing what you do? What makes you get up in the morning and continue to do what you do? Because I think if you can get to the heart of that, then you really begin to understand that person and what they're about. And I think that's important, especially now where we want communication, we want authenticity, and we really want to be able to empower each other and to lift each other up. And really getting to know someone is, I think it's so important, and even more important now that we're in this pandemic. Life is short, and I think that we're all beginning to understand and appreciate that more.
Welcome to the GovCon Giants podcast, federal contracting for people on the outside looking in. If you are here to learn how to win a piece of the pie without getting your face smashed in, then you've tuned in to the right place. Now, the giant that not only walks the walk, but talks the talk, your host, Eric Coffey.
Today's guest, Staci Redmon, entrepreneur, philanthropist, veteran advocate, innovator, and president, CEO of Strategy and Management Services, Inc., SAMS. Her company, SAMS, is doing some incredible things in the areas of healthcare, banking and finance, communications, utilities and energy, education, government, military, and defense. In her former life, she worked with some heavy hitters like Northrop Group and Booz Allen Hamilton. But today, you will find her regularly speaking on entrepreneurial panels for the Women's President Organization, WPO, and there's a reason for that. Staci has been on an incredible tear throughout her entrepreneurial journey, winning a ton of awards, including but not limited to the U.S. SBA's Northern Virginia Small Business Person of the Year, Smart CEO Future 50 Award, Enterprising Women of the Year, Inc. 5000, Washington Technology Fast 50, Virginia Small Business Veteran of the Year, and much, much more. During today's episode, we discuss her REDMON'S rules, weekly rules, and tips on leadership, management, business growth, and strategy, how SAMS is helping the healthcare providers push the digital limits, the gig economy, and much, much more today. Hold on to your seats because this is going to be a great one. I'd like to welcome our next giant, Staci Redmon. All right, welcome today, Staci Redmon. How are you, Staci?
I'm doing great, Eric, and I hope you are too.
Yes, I am. And today, as I was stating earlier on the call, right now, because I want to set some tone and some context for when this recording is happening. Today is, and this is April the 6th, and we are in the midst of the global pandemic with COVID at the time of this recording. So how are you making out up there in your area, Virginia?
Well, it's definitely a challenge, having that distance with all of our employees and maintaining, that spirit of communication has been challenging, and we're being very creative in ways that we do that. Video teleconferencing has become the norm, uh, and we're just, continuing to lift each other up and lift up our community and our employees when we can.
Okay, nice. Can you, just to kind of kick things off, can you tell us a little bit about your background? I know that your company, you're a service-disabled veteran-owned company. Can you tell us about your background a little bit?
Sure. I joined the Army when I was very young. I was 17, fresh out of high school. And really, I grew up in small town Pennsylvania, and there weren't many opportunities there. This is, 80s. My dad worked in the steel industry, and my mom worked for the state. So in central Pennsylvania, there weren't a lot of opportunities, which is very true today still. But I wanted to really get away and try something different. So I joined the Army at 17 and had a very successful career there until I was injured and could no longer do that. So I ended up becoming a civil servant and working in the federal government, and then later with industry. So, I've really come to know and appreciate the Department of Defense in many different ways and many different forms, and have continually supported that over 35 years now.
Wow. Now, the name of your company is Strategy and Management Services, Inc.
Yes.
Is there something behind that name?
That's a funny question. Well, being in the military, we love acronyms.
Right.
And I knew that I would have to find something that I could make into an acronym. So I knew it was going to be strategy, and I knew there was going to be management. So I was trying to make those two words fit together in a name that was available. You have to, when you're registering your company, you can't, duplicate anything, and you certainly wouldn't want to duplicate something out there. So that's what we ended up with, and that converted to Sam's. So
did you trademark that?
We did not trademark it. We actually attempted to, and there's a company that's in Europe, and they have a product that's called Sam's. So we're waiting for that trademark to expire. So,
man, listen, you probably make more money off the government now that they got the Sam system that we're using.
I know. Well, we predated that. So.
No, I know. I see you. I have it here in my notes, 2008.
Yeah, so we're going to wait for that trademark to expire, and then we'll make sure that we go back through that cycle. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, your business operates in multiple industries: healthcare, banking and finance, utilities, education, government. Tell us, what was your first foray into the world of business? Where industry did you start in?
So we started with defense. We start with what you know. That was very easy because you knew it and you didn't have a learning obstacle to overcome to be successful. I also knew that, during the time, we're talking 2008, so we are smack dab right in that recession.
Right.
And in order to go out the gate successfully, I felt that I would have more opportunities if I did what I knew. Because again, as an entrepreneur, you don't know, how am I going to attract employees? How am I going to pay them? How am I going to do all these things? So I figured, worst case scenario, I know how to do what I know. I know how to do this, and I'll be able to deliver if I can't hire someone. So
that's actually was my second question. You started in the middle of the recession, like in the real estate crash bust. Like, why did you start then? Why in 2008?
Well, it wasn't planned. For that time, what happened was, over the course of my career with the Department of Defense and the various services, I had the opportunity to see acquisition and how the government buys things particularly Department of Defense and military services, how they buy things. And I actually am one of the very few people, I'm sure there's more now, but at the time, one of the very few people that actually worked in the defense acquisition lifecycle from concept to sustainment. And I worked in every phase of that, which gave me the unique opportunity to work in the Army CIO's office and the Chief Information Office. And I happened to be sitting at the Pentagon in a meeting, and it was what we called the Weapon Systems Review. And it was where they were making funding decisions about which investments were going to be made in support of our service members. And I sat there and I watched, certain programs not get funded. Had I been in uniform, I would have one of these. And it was then that I had this spark that, I want to do this. I want to create a business that's not just focused on the bottom line, but how we take care of our employees and our community and our clients. So that was very early on in 2000. But I also knew this at the time, that I had only worked for large companies, large Fortune 500 companies. So I needed to really understand how a small business worked. So I had a very dear friend, and still do today. Her company was becoming medium-sized at the time. So, and she was growing as well. So it created a unique opportunity for us to be able to work together and to learn from each other on how business grows and how, for me, how small business runs. So I went to work with her for some time before I actually launched Sam's. And it was, I think that when you don't have a safety net, you figure out a way to survive, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So it got to the point where it was like, okay, it's time. You hear that inner voice, and, entrepreneurs are risk takers. So I heard that inner voice, and it said, do it now. So I gave my friend my resignation. I went home and waited for my husband to come home. And he was like, what are you doing here? Because, I was never home before him. And I'm like, okay, so I quit my job today. Now's the time. And, he looked at me, and, we had been married for quite some time by then. And he's like, okay, we've been through challenges before.
Right.
So you'll figure this out. And he had faith and trusted me, and knew that when I put my mind to something, it's going to work out. So, it just happened that way. It certainly wasn't planned to be right at 2008. It was just, I heard that calling and said, this is where I need to be, and this is what I need to do. If not now, then never. So let's do it.
Excellent. Would you recommend that people work with small businesses first before jumping out on their own?
I would say yes. That experience that I gained there was so key and so instrumental to me being able to do things right the first time and not have to learn from my mistakes. Running a business, a small business, is very different, especially in the government space. There are a lot of statutory and regulatory requirements that we have to adhere to. And when you're in a large business or in a large company, you don't see those things that small businesses have to do to be able to be compliant and to be able to be what they call procurement ready. There's a lot of work that goes into laying that foundation to actually be ready to be awarded a contract and be successful in executing that contract.
Well, no, that's very true. And you hear that so many small businesses, they just jump out there and people come to me. They don't understand their pricing. They don't understand sourcing. They don't understand the paperwork. Now those things, okay, let's say this. What did you learn at the large companies that they gave you that the small business didn't, and then vice versa?
So at the large companies, one of the ones that I work for, it was a management consulting firm. And I got a lot of experience there, more so than what I did with some of the large system integrators. And the reason being, in that management consulting firm, you were responsible for your project execution. Not just the delivery of that product, but the entire project execution. So I got to see a whole lot more when I worked at that firm. So that was, of course, very beneficial because I got to run my projects and to be able to see that inner workings of the corporation. So that was, of course, very beneficial. But at that small business, there's just so much more that goes into standing up a business, doing all of your compliance and your certifications and maintaining those, and the way your bylaws are written, your corporate bylaws. You could be structuring your company in a way that it may not be able to be certified at a later date.
Right.
So things like that. There's a lot of nuances that come with running a small business that are unique to those type of entities that large corporations don't necessarily see or have exposure to.
I would agree with that. Now, when working at some of those large companies, is that where you gained the confidence that you could run your own business because you saw it from end to end, or because you've managed the project and, like you said, you were responsible for the actual execution?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I don't know if you ever really gain the confidence. You just do it, right?
Right.
But I had peers, colleagues, friends, coworkers saying, you should be doing this. You should be doing this. So that kind of gave me, that encouragement that I needed, solicited, because I wasn't even really thinking about it at the time.
I often find that.
I've always been deliberate with my intentions, and I think that shows in my work. And that shows in how I take care of people and how I treat others. So because of that, a lot of friends and those colleagues were telling me, you should be doing this, and which kind of sparked that, well, let me think about this.
Right. Yeah, no, yeah. It gets it planted that seed in your head.
Yes, exactly.
Now, did anyone tell you you were crazy?
I think if you're an entrepreneur, you have to be crazy.
I think so. That's a great answer, Staci. I love it. I love it.
Crazy because, especially doing what we do, we're not doing what everybody else is doing. So we're going down a different road, a different path that's never been crossed before. So you have to be crazy. That's when you get innovation, when you're doing something that's never been done before. And that's what I encourage. That's how I encourage our team to think. That's how I encourage them to execute. We are going to be known for something that doesn't exist yet. So we're going into the unknown. So yes, are we a little crazy? Absolutely.
Great answer. Question. I saw, and going through, that you're part of the workforce development. Is that, when you sat on that board, is that part of your strategy for recruiting people? Or was it just a relationship that developed over time? What do you see as the benefit of sitting on the board of workforce development?
So it really was just a relationship that developed over time when I got the invite to do that. But at the same time, I want to say that, at SAMS, we had 3 core values, and that's commitment to our people, our clients, and our community, right? So I see that as part of my community service, is sitting on that board and being able to look at what's happening in the workforce. How is it developing here in my community? How are people being trained? How are they receiving the education that they need to be successful and to continue in this environment as the workforce is changing? So I've always been about that. As an entrepreneur, I am a job creator. So I really consider that part of my duty.
Okay. Now, as I was reviewing your profile, I noticed that the University of Virginia, you took a graduate certificate program in procurement and federal contracts management.
Yes.
Can you tell us about that curriculum? Because I've never heard of anything like that before.
Yeah, it was so it was really great.
Yes.
Definitely one of the things that have helped my business. Again, I'm
Okay.
going to go back to people starting a small business. If you're starting a small business in government contracting and you haven't familiarized and got real comfortable with the federal acquisition regulation, you do not need to be starting your business.
Right, right, right.
Because that's our Bible, that's our rules. And again, for me, having had that experience in that defense acquisition life cycle going from concept to sustainment, I dealt with the FAR all day long in how we were buying IT equipment for our service members. So I understood that, and I had some very good mentors along the way as I grew into the space that I was in. How the government buys is so important to being able to understand government contracting. So when that program became available, and it was a shared services program. So it was 6 courses with Strayer. It was an MBA, and it was 6 courses with Strayer University and 6 courses with UVA.
Okay.
What you ended up at the end was you got your MBA from Strayer and you received that graduate certificate from UVA. So it was a really good program, and I mean, we dug deep into the FAR and understanding it and actually doing case analysis and actually debating some of the decisions as well.
Wow.
So it's very, very interesting. I met a lot of good friends along the way, a lot of contracting officers in that program as well.
Wow, wow, wow. No, that's great. I looked it up, and that's the first time I had seen something like that.
Yeah, I'm not even sure they offer it anymore.
Well, I looked up and found that they have a graduate certificate in procurement and contracts management. So they have a graduate certificate that's 12 months and 2 courses per term. So I did do some homework, but I want to see what at the time when you went through it, what you gained from it. Obviously, that makes a world of difference for me, at least.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I see also that you regularly speak on entrepreneurial panels. And so in my experience of doing my podcast and also speaking myself, I'm a speaker on various panels. I notice that people tend to ask some of the same questions. So let me ask you, what are some of the questions that people don't ask that they should be asking?
Oh, that's a tough question.
Well, okay, let's go back. Would you agree with me that people ask a lot of the same questions?
Sometimes I've been on some panels where they've been very creative.
Okay.
In really shaping it. But what I've noticed now, and me, even if I'm facilitating a panel, I really try to be creative and do a lot of pre-calls so that we're gearing the topics towards what that event theme is. So I have seen a lot of creativity that's happening more so in the space now than when I first started out.
Okay. Well, could you share some examples of a creative question that people have asked?
I think right now it's what I'm seeing, prior to this, and I was just on a panel before we went to the lockdown. And this was a Women Empowering Women event held by a very dear friend of mine and one of my mentors. And, what they asked us about was not necessarily our business. It got very personal. I like when that element is brought into it, because at the same time, we are people.
Right.
So we have commitments to our families.
Right.
We've got kids. We've got dishes that need to be done, laundry that needs to be done. So everybody's human. So it doesn't always need to be about the business. I think that the most important thing to understand from people is their why. And I like to ask people, what is your why? Why are you doing what you do? What makes you get up in the morning and continue to do what you do? Because I think if you can get to the heart of that, then you really begin to understand that person and what they're about. And I think that's important, especially now where we want communication, we want authenticity, and we really want to be able to empower each other and to lift each other up. And really getting to know someone is, I think it's so important, and even more important now that we're in this pandemic. Life is short, and think that we're all beginning to understand and appreciate that more.
I would agree. Are there any trends taking place now that you see happening that particularly weren't happening when you first started in 2008?
Any trends? Let's see. I think that people are doing their homework more. You always hear, do your homework, when you look at these agencies, not just selling to everybody. So I think that rather than use this shotgun approach to business, people are being much more strategic about how they're approaching the market and how they're approaching their ideal client. I also believe that, social media is being used a whole lot more than when it was, 12 years ago when I started, to be able to target that customer base and to be able to really identify and validate what solutions you're bringing to that client. So I'm glad that people are using a more strategic approach. It's encouraging to see that, and we're using that too, a very strategic approach to our ideal client.
And prepping for the panel that you read, and I don't want to mess this up, it's BEYA, BEYA 2020?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay. You said that people can learn from your mistakes. Can you share with us an example of a mistake that you made in the past?
We all make mistakes.
I told you I was up reviewing you at 4:30 this morning.
We all make mistakes. Let's see.
You have a story, one that sticks out in your mind?
Sticks out. I don't necessarily call them mistakes. I think they're experiences, right?
Right. Yes.
Because a mistake is saying that you did something wrong, but you don't necessarily do something wrong. It's a learning experience, and you learn how to do that. When you touch the fire on the stove and your mom tells you it's hot, and you touch it anyway, well, you just had that learning experience.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Okay, so tell us about. I listen, and I'm the same way. I tell people, one of the things that happened to me is I was working in the private sector, and this company took advantage of me. But again, it also turned out to be the greatest thing that happened, because it propelled me further than I would have gone before had that not been for that experience.
Exactly. I think that, no matter what the experience is, looking for that opportunity and how you're going to overcome that, get through it quickly, and then look for that opportunity and how you're going to get past it. I think that that's the most important thing, because you've got to figure out how you're going to overcome those little obstacles along the way, rather than dwell on whatever happened that didn't go the way that you thought that it should.
Right. No, that's true. Okay. Now, okay, let's move on to your REDMON'S rules.
Yeah.
Rule number 30.
Okay.
Build a vibrant workplace culture.
Yeah.
So tell us, what are some practical things that you've done in the past to create a vibrant workplace culture?
So communication. Communication is so key. When I first started the business years ago, almost 12 years now, June will be 12. Wow. I think communication is so key. Meeting each employee, knowing every employee, knowing their families, traveling to all the customer sites once a month. I mean, I was round robin all over the place, on a plane here, driving there, on a train here. Creating that culture and showing that genuine care and concern for others is so important. As we grew, I think I built a team that I entrusted that would carry that culture forward, and they didn't. Here's a mistake.
Okay. I'm learning. Listen.
And it was a learning experience that culture, that what was important to me and the reasons for starting the company were not being done in my spirit, and just were not continuing. Unfortunately, that was something that I realized very late because I had these blinders on. I was so focused on that strategic growth, right? How are we growing? Where are we going? In expecting that I built a leadership team that was carrying that culture that I had established. It took me some time to realize that, wait a second, this isn't operating the way that I would, and what's important to me and the values of the company are not being assimilated to others. And we're just not living up to those. So I had to take a step back and figure out, okay, how do we fix this? And how do we position it to be what it should be going forward? So that, required a lot of work. We're still in the mix of that, but rebuilding that company culture to what my whole reasons for starting the company, and making sure that every employee and their families understand what we're about, and not saying yes to every business opportunity. That's a really big thing. When we were very young, we were focused on growth. You get the Inc. 5000 and you get the, Future 50 and the Fast this and the so on and so forth. You're so focused on growth. Well, not all growth is good, just like not all revenue is good. And if you don't pay attention to that culture, you realize that it quickly gets lost in the numbers. And that's what happened to us. And when I realized that I had to take that step back, I had derailed the business that I had started. So I had to take that step back and say, Staci, is this the reason why you started the business? And answer that truthfully. And if not, then what are you going to do about it? And what that caused us to do was really define who we were, validate my why again, define who we were, and divest ourselves of business that did not fit our culture, business that did not make sense for Sam's, employees that did not fit our culture, because we didn't set those expectations coming in, or they never had it along. So it's been a tremendous learning experience. And again, we're still going through this as we go through a reset and pivot the business. But you know what? I look at it this way. I started the business in 2008, smack dab in the middle of the recession. When you're under pressure, sometimes that's when you perform best. You can do one of two things. You can back away and you can, go internal, go inside yourself, or you can run towards that brick wall. I choose to run towards the brick wall. So this is a perfect opportunity for us to reinvent ourselves and to really position ourselves for that legacy business that was the reason why I started the business in the first place.
Wow. What percentage of your workforce was telework pre-COVID?
None.
Okay, I guess that makes the next question really easy, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, we had people that would work remotely periodically, but it wasn't, hey, you're always teleworking. It certainly wasn't that situation.
So you were saying prior to COVID, none of your workforce was telework?
None of it. No. People had, on occasion, would work remotely, a sick child, a doctor's appointment, something like that. But, it wasn't a common practice that people, were 100% teleworking. Mm-hmm.
And how has this particular pandemic impacted your business?
So it has impacted it. We definitely, all those things that I was talking about, culture and communication, we have to put that into overdrive now. Because we're not seeing each other. So it's forcing us to talk to each other and talk to each other more often. And I'm a big fan of that anyway. I hate emails, because you got to understand that when you send an email, the way that it's received is based on how the receiver's receiving it, not how you're sending it. So I don't like emails for that reason, because they don't give tone, and they don't give authenticity. So I think they're just generic. So it forces us to be able to talk more and to be able to do more outreach to the employees. So we've set up, various courses of action besides our intranet, our employee intranet, in how we're communicating and doing our outreach to our employees, and making sure that they're aware of all the things that are happening out there, and keeping them abreast of services that are available to them.
Wow. Wow. Redmond's rules, number 138, celebrate the everyday leaders.
Mm-hmm.
Leadership isn't a one-man or one-woman show. Every company is filled with pushers and pullers who organize efforts and keep productive flow going.
Mm-hmm.
So is this something that you learned while serving our country?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Leadership is everywhere. And you have to give people the opportunity so that they can grow and they can build that encouragement that they need to be able to take things forward. Maybe they're not ready to run a company right now, maybe not a division, but maybe they can lead a one person. And if that one person is what's important to them and where they are in terms of their leadership skills, then you have to give them that opportunity so that they too can learn and they can figure out how their management style, their leadership style, and so that they can grow. That is just so important. People don't grow if you don't give them the opportunity. So, we're all about growing. And again, there's no failures. Is there ideal situations for things? Sometimes there's not. But expecting people to take action and then giving them the support that they need to be able to take that action is so key in growing resources and growing people.
One of the things that I saw that you wrote, an article, post, it was talking about the digital transformation in healthcare with AI, 5G. And you talked about how SAMS is helping the healthcare providers stakeholder push the digital limits with proven frameworks for digital transformation adaptation. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So some of the things that we're looking at are some of these advanced technologies and how we take those to market. And not just the current technologies, but again, I said SAMS is going to be known for something that doesn't exist. So we're pushing the limits on that technology and how it can be used for the benefit of people, and how, more specifically, how our elderly folks are being taken care of. People want to age in place now, which, makes perfect sense. I saw it with my grandparents. I'm seeing it right now with my husband's grandmother. People want to age in place, and they actually do better aging in place. But at the same time, you need to make sure that their quality of care is what it should be. And I think that, we're even seeing some of that technology come forward right now with us all in this shelter in place. So, we're pushing the limits on that and how we do that monitoring, how we make sure that everyone is still in a safe environment and that they're taking their medications as they should. Their blood pressure is what it should be. Their sugar is where it should be. And how we advance those technologies to do predictive analytics behind them and make sure that that quality of care stays consistent in a good, healthy environment.
When I look at your company, Strategy and Management Services, I wouldn't think that you would be so heavily involved in technology.
Well, there's strategy, right? So
Yes.
There's strategy of technology and the management of technology. And if you look at our SAMS core methodology, you can see that the solution begins with advisory solutions. So that's the strategy piece. And then it ends up with managed services. So that's the management piece.
Okay. No. I just want to ask. I mean, I'm reading through and I'm like, wait a second. She speaks like a technologist, but then she says she's a strategy person. So no, that's great.
Technology is strategy, because sometimes you don't get both of those.
That's true. Well,
we're setting our clients up so that they're not just buying IT for the sake of buying IT.
Right.
really a strategy to it.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true, because we know that some of our government could just buy things to buy them
Right.
without having a plan on how to implement it, roll it out. So I
How it
agree.
interoperates,
Yes,
and that's exactly the experience that I saw,
right,
which led to me starting a business, because we can, we've got to spend, right, in the
right,
federal space. We've
right.
got to spend. We've got to make sure everything is obligated, but we need to make sure that makes sense and make sure that we're making the right investments.
Now I hear the terms Internet of Things being tossed around pretty liberally. Can you
Mm-hmm.
tell us what it means, and how do you build for or provide solutions for it?
So, Internet of Things are devices that actually go on the internet. These are, a lot of people think about it from their computers, right? But look, we've got dishwashers now, we've got refrigerators.
Refrigerators, yes.
Everybody's got these, devices. I, make sure I get my steps in every day. All this consistent monitoring. So all these things are connected to the internet. And that's the Internet of Things, and being able to see that data and act on that data and have it make sense.
Do you think that will be part of the solution moving forward with future pandemics?
It definitely plays into it. It'll be interesting to see once we get through this and they start to triage exactly how this virus grew and grew at the numbers that it did, and actions that could have been taken, maybe to minimize the impacts. Once again, it all goes down to the data. It will be very interesting to see, again, how that fleshes out when we get past this and we start to look at, why things happen the way that they did and how we can prevent it going forward. So will IoT be a part of that in some fashion? I'm sure it will. Advanced analytics, artificial intelligence, machine language, yes, all of those things will come into play. And I'm sure they are now, actually.
Are you an IT person?
I am, well.
I mean, listen, I'm getting the feeling that.
Well, that's really where my career started.
I see that you're a systems engineer at first.
Right. I was a systems engineer before it was a popular thing. I started with hardware, on the hardware side. And I got so tired of the software people saying, it's the hardware, that I actually when I went back to school, I got a degree in computer information systems, because I needed to know how that software was working and to be able to code it, so that, I was tired of getting blamed as the hardware person.
Okay.
So I ended up as a systems engineer with both hardware and software experience, so that I could really diagnose what is the real problem here.
Now you've been advancing your education to solve problems for a long time.
Yes. Continuous learning. It's so important. There's, a lot of things that are happening out there, and the world is ever changing. So, and I think as an entrepreneur, we have to be in a continuous learning. That's how you stay relevant.
I agree. Now, on to the topic, gig economy. I told you we would get here. I told you we would arrive at this point.
Yeah.
All right. Now, you wrote an ebook on workforce culture with the new gig economy. Without giving all your secrets away, what do you think will be different than when our parents went to work?
Oh my goodness. It's so different. It's so different, isn't it?
Oh my goodness. No, I mean, if you want, I'll start. I remember as a kid, my father worked for a moving company, Seven Santini's Brothers, and he drove the trucks and they would move people. But I remember we had like the company events, and they had the full benefits, and we always had these big like picnics and annual events and birthday cookouts, and I remember all this stuff. And he was there for like 27 years at that company, 27 years. And we grew up and we knew all the people, right? We knew his coworkers and we knew their families, and that's how I grew up. So you take it over.
Well, I grew up the same way. Like I said, my dad, worked in the steel mill and my mom worked for the state. So yeah, we knew all the families. We went to all the company picnics. We did all of those things.
Yeah.
And that's just not happening. We're in a different time now. We're in a time where, folks are, I don't know if they get bored easily or what, but we're in a time where it seems like it's like about getting your hustle on, right?
Yeah.
You look at, say, Instacart. I use it all the time, right?
Right.
I don't have to go to the grocery store. I don't have to spend my time there. I can go right on my app. I can click, deliver it to my house, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've just saved so much time, and oh, by the way, then I can just reorder when I need to. And it takes me a couple of seconds and my groceries just magically show up at my door.
Yes.
So you think about things like that. You think about, look at Uber and Lyft, how they've changed the market.
Right.
And they've really disrupted the car industry and taxis, right? Very disrupted. And
I think also rental cars. People never mention rental cars. But
rental cars.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
people forget rental. They say taxis. I rarely ever get rental cars anymore.
Yeah, I'm with you, Eric. I don't get them either. Why?
No. Why? Yeah, no.
Sit in the parking lot at the hotel,
Right. Yeah, and you pay for parking to keep your rental car.
Right.
Right.
So I think that we've got into this environment, and I think it's convenience, right? We're also busy and we're looking for those life hacks, those shortcuts. And, the gig economy really facilitates that. How can I, do the things that I need to do that are necessary in order to survive, but do them more efficiently? And, the gig economy has just dominated that space. And I think that it's going to continue to dominate it. And if we can spend that time, doing the thing, having somebody else do the things that we don't like to do, to focus on the things that we'd like to, I'm all for it.
Now, I'm going to just pause real quick. For those persons out there listening who are not familiar with the term, the gig economy, I have a definition here. It says the gig economy is made up of three main components: independent workers paid by the gig, which is a task or a project, as opposed to those workers who receive a salary or hourly wage; the consumers who need a specific service, for example, a ride to their next destination or a particular item delivered; and the companies that connect the worker to the consumer in a direct manner, including app-based technology platforms such as Uber, Airbnb, Lyft, Etsy, or TaskRabbit, act as the medium through which the worker is connected to and ultimately paid by the consumer. I just want to clarify that for those persons. We're tossing around words, and sometimes we forget that everyone listening is not familiar with it.
Is not familiar with it. Yeah. So. And another big one is that it's been coming up, Tackle.
What's
I've
Tackle?
used that one too. Have you used that one?
No, I've never used Tackle.
Oh yeah, I needed. What did I need? Oh, I needed a TV hung. I had redone a room and I needed a TV hung, and I'm like, I don't have time to do this. And so you use Tackle. It's those small jobs.
Oh, I use Fiverr.
Okay. Yes, I heard of that one.
I use Fiverr. I use 99 Designs.
Oh, I haven't heard of that one.
Yep, I did. I designed my podcast cover using 99 Designs.
Oh.
Yep. They and then I use Upwork and I use Guru.
I use Upwork also. Yep.
Yes. So I use
another one. There's another example.
Right. And I use these things like every day. I mean, even right now with the person that does my bookkeeping is on Upwork.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And the person that does all of my video editing comes from Guru.
Oh, nice.
And we've had I've probably put out 300 plus videos that have been edited. And this guy did almost like 99% of them. Since 2017, we've been working together through Guru.
Oh, how nice is that? I think that's usually what you'll find too, when you use those apps, you find some really great people, and then you just kind of you stick with them, and they get to know you. It really builds that relationship. And you know what's great about that, especially as a small business, is look, I don't have to have a full-time employee doing a part-time job or just doing a project job.
Right.
So, it really helps keep those numbers down, and really, utilizing the best of the resources that are available out there for each of their specialties.
Right. No, I agree. I agree with you. I saw in one of your conversations, you talked about how can other veterans leverage their uniqueness to be a competitive force in the job market. Can you touch on that briefly?
Yeah. Veterans are unique. Look, and, I've often talked about why veterans make great entrepreneurs.
Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. We have time.
Yeah. So, I believe that veterans are really great entrepreneurs. You got to think about the environment. When we went to, those of us that went to basic training, right? They picked us up, they shipped us off somewhere. They took all of our uniqueness away and said, conform, right?
Mm-hmm.
Think about what an entrepreneur does. Look, you're going into an environment that you don't know. You're not necessarily sure what the risks are, but you're being told, be successful and operate. You can't just stand still, you got to move. That's exactly what we do, what veterans do. That's exactly what we have to do. We've got to make decisions with little or no information. We have to make sure that the mission is successful, hence taking care of our clients, taking care of our employees. It's selfless service. Entrepreneurship is selfless service, always.
Right.
There's just so many correlations, and I think that's why veterans make great entrepreneurs. And, I'm so glad that we have VBOX and veteran outreach centers and all these things that are happening now that are really encouraging veterans to, take that uniqueness and take those ingrained capabilities and skills that we acquired during our military experience to bring them forward and to enter the business world. It's so encouraging to see that.
Wow. Well, I took your quiz that you posted. 70% of women remain undiagnosed with, and the answer I came up with was polycystic ovary syndrome. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. I did. I took it. I looked it up. So tell us about that issue and why that's important.
Well, it's really important because as a woman, and I can vouch this for me, we tend to take care of everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Our family, our kids, our spouse, our home, our employee. We tend to take care of everybody else, and we don't take care of ourselves. And I put that out there for women to really, hey, take a look at this. And we've had other articles that have been out there around women's healthcare, because I think we are underserved population of ourselves, and we do this to ourselves again because we're trying to take care of everything and everyone else. So every now and then you'll see, me post something about a women's health issue just to create that awareness and to be able to have that one woman say, oh, I recognize this in me. And maybe she goes forward and takes care of herself and, goes to see the doc and puts herself first. It's important because I know as a woman business owner, I tend to put others before me. And I have to do better at that. So it's a reminder for me too.
No, that's good. That's great. That's great. Now, so some parting words before we close out, and then let us know how people can reach you.
So I would say, first off, Eric, this has been great. And thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I think right now, more than any other time that we have seen in our lifetimes, we need to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves and taking care of others. stay inside, shelter in place, wash your hands. This will pass. I know we're alone right now. There are people out there that want to help you. If you need help, reach out and get that help. No one's ever by themselves. That's very important, especially right now when we're secluded and not with each other. If you want to reach me, there's a couple of different ways to reach me. We are on all of the social media platforms, and I am on all of those as well. I can also be reached at staciredmon.com, and the SAMS website is getsamsnow.com.
So, Staci, I'd like to thank you so much for coming on today. A great conversation. And I agree with you. I don't think we should always have to talk 90% about business because health is wealth. And I think that's just as important. Mental health as well as physical health, emotional health, in addition to business. So again, I'm happy we were able to touch on some women's issues at the very end. So thank you so much for bringing that up and addressing a topic that, again, is probably not getting enough media coverage considering all things that are going on around us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Take care. Thank you so much for tuning in today to this episode with the remarkable Staci Redmon. She was recommended by one of my podcast guests who referred to her as their mentor. And what it is so amazing is that we all travel on this incredible journey and believe that we are alone, when in actuality, we are only as alone as we allow ourselves to be. I hope that this pandemic and COVID has taught us about the power of Zoom and also networking with other people through other medium outside of conferences and events. There are so many people out here who want to help us succeed. In fact, they're cheering for us even when we're not cheering for ourselves. So go over and beyond, become invaluable to someone, and you will be rewarded. Thank you so much for listening today. As always, the show notes, book recommendations, and more you can find on our website, govcongiants.com/podcast.